After the coronation event, where Prince Ukandu could not lift the ancestral staff that would show if he was the true heir, everyone shook their heads in disbelief. They could not understand what had happened. People then left the grounds where the coronation took place. Prince Ukandu and Princess Adan went back to their hut, crying for the rest of the day. They were very upset and disappointed. Meanwhile, when Chief Uzo reached his house, he waited patiently for his son Arinze to return home. Arinze had decided not to go to the coronation because he did not want to feel the pain of seeing Princess Adan again. Seeing her would remind him of his heartbreak when she had chosen to marry Prince Ukandu instead of him, despite Arinze's unconditional love for her. Arinze wanted to avoid that emotional suffering, so he stayed away from the coronation event. When Arinze finally came back, he found his father sitting outside with a mysterious smile on his face. "Father?" Arinze asked as he walked up. "Why do you look so happy? And what happened at the coronation?" Chief Uzo gestured for Arinze to sit next to him. As Arinze sat down, his father told him about the surprising things that happened. How Prince Ukandu couldn't lift the staff, how the head priest said he wasn't the true heir, and how all men were asked to come and be tested for royal blood. Arinze shook his head sadly, feeling sorry for Princess Adan to have her dreams crushed so publicly. But he also thought maybe it was fair, considering how she had ignored his love before. "I won't go through such a big show," Arinze said firmly. "I know I'm not royal. This is something for princes and nobles." But Chief Uzo insisted. "Son, you have to put your feelings aside and come with me to this important test, even if it's just to see what the ancestors want." Arinze started to argue, but his father raised his hand to stop him. Chief Uzo looked calm but serious. "I've lived a long time following the path the spirit set for me. I feel like something big is happening, changing our lives in a big way." He put a calming hand on Arinze's arm. "I can't explain it all, but I really want you to come with me, with an open mind and a humble heart. There might be more to this royal stuff than what we can see." Arinze looked at his father's serious face, thinking about what he said. He knew his father's spiritual knowledge was strong, built over many years of practice. With a sigh, Arinze agreed. "Okay, father, I'll go with you and see what happens, even though I don't see how this is about me." Chief Uzo smiled and patted Arinze's shoulder. "That's smart, Arinze. Now get some rest and prepare yourself. I feel like things are going to change a lot." As they went inside their hut, the village got quiet, like it was waiting for something big to happen. The day after the shocking coronation failure, Prince Ukandu was consumed with rage and humiliation. His entire life had been building towards becoming the High King, only to have that destiny cruelly ripped away. In his arrogance, Ukandu lashed out at those closest to him. When maids came to his chambers with food, he angrily rejected their offerings, berating them as foolish servants. Ukandu knocked the platters from their hands, splattering food all over the shocked women. Not satisfied with just verbal abuse, he struck them with his fists and feet, chasing the battered maids from his presence. News of Ukandu's violent outbursts spread quickly. Princess Adan knew she needed to intervene before her husband's behavior spiraled completely out of control. One night, she cautiously approached his quarters, hoping to be the voice of reason he desperately needed. "My prince," Adan said carefully as she entered. "You must find a way to make peace with what has happened. Losing your temper and lashing out will only breed more turmoil." But Ukandu was too blinded by resentment to listen. He turned on Adan with venom in his eyes. This is all your fault," he spat. "You brought this curse upon me with your wretched existence." Adan recoiled in shock as Ukandu raged on. "From the moment I married you, my fortunes turned. The ancestors rejected me because of your foul spirit. You are the reason I have been disgraced and stripped of my birthright." The princess opened her mouth to protest, but Ukandu's fists silenced her words. He rained blow after blow down upon his wife, venting his anger and frustration through physical violence. Adan crumpled to the floor, crying out in pain as Ukandu's attacks intensified. "Get out!" he screamed between punches. "Get your cursed self away from me, you wretched woman! I want nothing more to do with you." Battered and bleeding, Adan scrambled from Ukandu's chambers, his vicious words ringing in her ears. She had never witnessed such an unhinged, monstrous side of the man she once planned to spend her life with. As she fled into the night, Adan realized the full consequences of her arrogant decision to abandon Arinze's unconditional love all those years ago. Her suffering was only beginning after being cast out by the man she had sacrificed everything for. That night, Princess Adan cried endlessly, regretting her decision to marry the cruel Prince Ukandu. Memories of the genuine love Arinze had shown her flooded her mind. She remembered how he had treated her with such tender care and unconditional love. Arinze had never laid a harmful hand on her, or placed more importance on earthly possessions than on cherishing her. She was always his first choice in life. Adan realized the marriage to Ukandu had been a terrible mistake. The very purpose of becoming queen over all 5 kingdoms had failed miserably. Racked with sobs, she made the difficult choice to leave this disastrous union behind. After composing herself, Adan decided she needed to speak to her father, King Chukwuemeka, about breaking off the marriage to Prince Ukandu. The next morning, Adan made the familiar journey to her father's palace in the heart of the kingdom. The guards recognized the downtrodden princess and escorted her inside to the king's chambers. As she entered, King Chukwuemeka looked at his daughter with sadness in his eyes. He could see the bruises and anguish written on her face, evidence of the suffering she had endured. "Father," Adan began, trying to keep her voice steady, "I have come to you after much torment. I wish to dissolve my marriage to Prince Ukandu." She hung her head in shame. "You warned me about the path I was choosing, but I let my pride blind me. Now I have paid a terrible price for abandoning true love." To her surprise, King Chukwuemeka showed no hint of sympathy. He simply nodded knowingly, as if he had expected this outcome all along. "My child, you made an arrogant choice those years ago to cast aside the noble Arinze in pursuit of grandeur and status with Prince Ukandu," the king said sternly. "Did you think there would be no consequences for such actions?" Adan opened her mouth to protest, but her father raised his hand to silence her. "You were obsessed with becoming royalty at any cost, even if it meant betraying your own heart and the heart of the man who loved you unconditionally through all your trials." The king's eyes bored into her, making Adan feel like a foolish child again. "I specifically cautioned you to be patient and have faith in the path the ancestors had set before you," King Chukwuemeka continued, his voice tinged with disappointment. "Yet you arrogantly forged ahead and traded pure earned love for empty promises and pretty lies." Tears spilled down Adan's cheeks anew as she absorbed the weight of her father's reprimand. She had indeed made a grave error in judgment that had led her down this path of suffering and regret. The king let out a world-weary sigh. "You made your choice to abandon the blessings bestowed upon you in pursuit of fleeting material wealth and status," he intoned. "And now you must endure the consequences of that decision, as painful as they may be." Adan's head snapped up, eyes wide with desperation. "But father, surely after this injustice I have suffered, after this abuse at Prince Ukandu's hand, you will allow me to seek peace away from this wretched marriage." But King Chukwuemeka's expression was uncompromising. "My daughter, you knew the man you were binding yourself to in those sacred vows," he replied, unmoved. "If he has now shown you the depths of his arrogance and cruelty, that is a reality you chose for yourself when you accepted his ring." The king rose from his throne, signaling that the discussion had concluded. With a sharp gesture, he summoned the royal guards. "You will be escorted immediately back to Prince Ukandu's lands, as is your lawful place," he declared to the stunned Adan. "Any further disobedience to the path you selected, and there will be severest consequences to follow." As the burly soldiers gripped Adan's arms, pulling her towards the exit, the disgraced princess looked imploringly at her unrelenting father. "How can you be so cruel?" she pleaded through her sobs. "Have you no mercy for your own daughter?" King Chukwuemeka stood firm and impassive, for he knew harsh love was required to break through Adan's stubborn delusions. "You were warned repeatedly about discarding the purest gift, Arince's devotion," he stated flatly. "This is the reality you manifested through arrogance. Now, you must find the humility to overcome it, or remain a prisoner of your poor choices forever." With that, Princess Adan was unceremoniously escorted from the palace under strict guard. Her cries of dismay echoed through the halls, rebounding off the same walls where she had played as a spoiled, naive child so many years ago. Now she was being punished as the arrogant woman she had become, forced by cruel fate to face the consequences she had naively brought upon herself. With only 4 days left until the big market day event where all men would be tested to find the true heir to the throne, Prince Ukandu couldn't sit still on a hot afternoon. He felt really restless. He tried hard to think of a plan for what to do next. He was very upset because, despite getting ready for years to be the next king, he couldn't lift the special staff during the ceremony. Ukandu slowly made his way to the throne room, drawn to the sight of his late father's ornate king's throne sitting empty. He stared at the regal chair, brows furrowed as his thoughts swirled. "How is it possible that I lost this incredible opportunity after so much meticulous preparation?" he muttered aloud, confusion and denial hanging thickly in the air around him. After pacing for a while, Ukandu came to a desperate conclusion. He would seek out a powerful seer living in a distant land, one rumored to have the gift of revealing the true heir. Ukandu decided that if the seer named someone else as the next king, he would kill that person to eliminate the competition. He also planned to use dark magic to cleanse Princess Adan, allowing her to pass whatever test was required. With this dangerous plot in mind, Ukandu felt he could then try again at the next market day event to lift the ancestral staff and claim his rightful place as High King, no matter who stood in his way. The prince was determined to seize the crown through whatever means necessary, even if it meant committing treacherous acts against innocent lives. Ukandu was sure this twisted plan would let him try again to lift the special staff and become the High King. He was willing to do anything, even lie, hurt, or kill, to get the crown. Feeling determined, Ukandu told Princess Adan they had to go on a trip urgently to find a powerful seer. Adan didn't understand why, but agreed without question. She was still blindly devoted to helping Ukandu become king, no matter what. As they got ready for their secret journey, a spooky feeling settled over the palace. It was like the old spirits could tell something bad was happening, or maybe it was just a sign of trouble ahead. Prince Ukandu and Princess Adan agreed to depart on their journey early the next morning. That night, They slept with eager anticipation, their minds filled with hope and expectations about the insights the rumored seer might provide. As the bustling early morning light peeked over the horizon, Ukandu and Adan set out on their way to seek the wise seer who lived in a faraway land. Their motives were to discover what had truly gone awry at the coronation ceremony, preventing Ukandu from lifting the ancestral staff and claiming the throne. Additionally, Ukandu harbored a darker objective: to have the seer perform some sort of spiritual cleansing on Adan, speculating that perhaps she was the root cause obstructing his rightful ascent to power. When they arrived at the seer's distant home, they couldn't even get off their horses before she started talking. She seemed to know they were coming and immediately told them something important about Ukandu's family. The seer said Ukandu wasn't actually the first son of his late father, the old king. She told a story about how before Ukandu's father became king, he had another son with a different woman. Later he married Ukandu's mother and had more kids, including Ukandu. Even though the seer knew about the secret son, she didn't want to tell anyone, because she knew Ukandu's dark plans to kill him. She decided to give Ukandu confusing messages instead of revealing the truth. Even though Ukandu got angrier, the seer kept talking. She said the mother of this hidden son went to live in a faraway forest when she was pregnant. While she was there, a man who was collecting leaves for herbal treatment found her and helped her give birth. The woman died during childbirth, and the son grew up not knowing he was supposed to be king. At this point, Ukandu got really angry and stood up, shouting furiously. He boldly said that the secret firstborn son would never be allowed to take his crown and kingdom, which he had been trained for since he was born. Ukandu went on to say that he would destroy every village and forest to find and get rid of this person he saw as a threat to his plans before they could become king. But the seer didn't react to Ukandu's angry threats. She warned him strongly not to harm the predicted heir, saying he was chosen by the powerful spirits of their ancestors. The seer said if Ukandu tried to go against this person's destiny, the ancient guardians would use their supernatural power against him. The seer warned Ukandu, but he didn't listen. He was a spoiled prince who always got what he wanted and ignored her advice. He thought her warnings were just old stories and didn't care. He left angrily with Adan, determined to find and get rid of the supposed lost heir by any means necessary, and promised to defeat any man who challenged his plans to become king. The arrogant prince was ready to do anything to take the throne, which he felt was his birthright. However, the wise seer warned that the prophesied true heir was much more prepared than Ukandu to justly lead the kingdom. Through the difficulties in his life, this man had learned very valuable lessons: how to handle problems with grace, and how to guide people with true compassion rather than Ukandu's selfish ambition. The seer urged the bitter prince to be humble and accept the will of the gods and ancestors, as their decree represented the right path everyone must follow. But Ukandu did not listen, defiantly saying that would never be allowed to happen. With those disrespectful words, he angrily stormed off, determined to find and completely destroy this alleged firstborn son of his father. The seer could only sadly shake her head as she watched them go. She knew that human greed and destiny were starting a big conflict. Only time would show who would win in the end. When Prince Ukandu got home after meeting with the seer, he went into his chambers and stayed lost in thought until nightfall. A strange and dark thought entered Prince Ukandu's troubled mind. With time quickly running out before the market day event, and all his previous schemes failing, he decided to try bribbing the powerful high priest who oversaw the sacred ceremonies of the 5 kingdoms. Ukandu would make the chief priest an offer too tempting to refuse, in exchange for helping him seize the crown. Meanwhile, Princess Adan in her own private room, was having an entirely different inner philosophical struggle. She began thinking about the years she had spent with her former lover Arinze, the kind, supportive man who had stood by her side through all her darkest moments with endless patience and empathy. Adan realized with sadness that no other person, not even her husband Ukandu, could ever make her feel truly loved and valued like Arinze did. Instead of the endless love Ukandu promised, the spoiled prince had only brought hatred, suffering, and physical hurt into Adan's life. As memories of Arinze's kindness came flooding back, filling Adan with deep regret and longing, she knew what she had to do. The princess decided, in the morning light, she would leave Ukandu and go find Arinze, hoping he could forgive her terrible mistakes. While the arrogant Prince Ukandu became more desperate and crazy in his troubled mind that night, Princess Adan's own thoughts became clear with a new sense of purpose. Though the challenges ahead would be huge, she could finally see a possible way back to the unconditional love and happiness she had foolishly thrown away. It might be too late to make things right. But deep down, Adan knew she had to try to find forgiveness. If not for herself, then for the chance to return to the only man who had truly understood her real self. The following morning, Prince Ukandu hastily departed to seek out the chief priest's dwelling, and Adan also departed to go see Arinze. It was a beautiful morning in the peaceful village. Arinze sat outside his modest home, expertly drumming a rhythmic beat on the well-worn instrument before him. The rich, soulful melodies reverberated through the air, each strike of the drumstick carrying the weight of deep emotion. From a distance, Princess Adan heard the achingly familiar sounds. Her feet started moving without conscious thought, drawn inexplicably towards the source of the haunting music. As she drew nearer, memories came flooding back in vivid detail. Adan remembered the happy times when she first met Arinze, the talented drummer. She could clearly remember how his music used to make her feel so happy, making her want to dance with excitement. His music made her feel calm and peaceful, like she had found where she belonged. But those sweet, idyllic moments were now obscured by the bitter reality of choices made. Adan's selfish pursuit of wealth and status had robbed her of the beautiful life that could have been, replacing it with profound regret and suffering. Tears welled up in her eyes as she watched Arinze, eyes closed, pouring every ounce of emotion into each drum beat. Overwhelmed, Adan slowly made her way closer, until she stood mere feet away from the man whose unconditional love she had so carelessly cast aside years before. She yearned to go back to those days of innocent bliss they had shared. Finally, Arinze opened his eyes, breathing hard from the fervor of his musical catharsis. When his gaze landed on the unexpected sight of Adan standing there, he stopped cold. A myriad of emotions flickered across his face: shock, sadness, lingering adoration. But then he looked at her more closely, the wounds, the bruises on her delicate face, and felt sorry for her above everything else. In a gentle voice filled with worry, Arinze asked, "What happened to you? Who did this?" Tears glistened in Adan's eyes as she started telling Arinze about the suffering she had gone through at the hands of her cruel husband, Prince Ukandu. She explained how almost every day the prince would hurt her badly with beatings and cruel words. Ukandu angrily blamed Adan for his failure to become king and for feeling embarrassed when the sacred staff didn't choose him during the crowning ceremony. He said it was her fault that he wasn't considered the true leader of the kingdoms. As Adan told Arinze about these painful moments, she couldn't hold back her sadness anymore. She fell to the ground, holding onto the bottom of Arinze's simple clothes, crying hard. Please, I'm begging you," she cried. "Take me back. Forgive me for being so proud and selfish. I just want to go back to the loving relationship I foolishly gave up." But Arinzi's face became firm at her request. The pain from when she had betrayed his unconditional love still hurt him. He shook his head strongly and moved away from the crying princess. "How dare you come back here after what you did to me?" he yelled, his voice filled with anger and pain. "I loved you with all my heart, and you betrayed me just to chase after money and status." Their loud argument caught the attention of Chief Uzo, who was inside the simple house. He rushed to the door and saw the chaotic scene. Adan crying at Arinzi's feet. Then he realized what was happening, and his anger grew. "You!" Uzo said angrily, walking towards Adan with his fists clenched. "How dare you come here after abandoning true love for material things, after everything we sacrificed for you?" Uzo loomed over the cowering princess, years of pain and disappointment finally coming out. "We accepted you even when you had problems. We defended you when others treated you badly, and you repaid our kindness by giving it all up to be with a terrible man for his riches." As Uzo spoke harshly, his voice got louder and louder, filled with all the pain he had been holding inside. Adan could only shrink back and cry, feeling awful about what her choices had caused. Finally, Uzo grabbed Adana's arms tightly and forced her to stand up. He pointed towards the path that led out of their village, telling her to leave. "I want you out of my sight, you selfish, ungrateful woman," he bellowed, punctuating his words with a forceful shove that sent Adan stumbling. "You made your miserable choice long ago, and you'll have to live with it." Arinz stepped forward then, his face showing how hurt he still was in finality. "He's right, Adan. You are a married woman now, stuck in the dishonorable path you proudly chose." His words hurt her deeply. "Don't ever think I'll forgive you for throwing away my love like it meant nothing. Go back to the fancy life you picked over me, and stay there." With those harsh words still echoing in her mind, Adan turned and walked away, feeling completely devastated. The two men she had loved so much watched her leave with unforgiving eyes until she was completely out of sight. As Adan's sad cries drifted away, Chief Uzo put a comforting hand on his son's shoulder. Even though their hearts were broken, he believed they had handled the situation well, showing the dignity of honorable men. "You did the right thing by pushing her away again," Uzo said seriously. "A love that was thrown away so easily shouldn't be taken back hastily." Arinze could only nod, feeling too sad and still in love to say anything. Deep down, he knew that Adan showing up today, hurt and asking for forgiveness, wasn't enough to make up for the big betrayal she had done to their relationship. Maybe one day, if she becomes humble and understands how wrong she was, there might be a chance for her to make things right. But for now, it was important to stick to their decision and not give in to her sudden regret, even though it hurt them deeply. As the two tired men went back home, they knew that being tough on Adan was actually helping her in the long run. Sometimes, the toughest lessons lead us to where we're supposed to be. Prince Ukandu arrived to the chief priest place upon arriving. There he made a shocking offer. He would share half of all the money and wealth from the 5 kingdoms if he helped guarantee Ukandu's coronation as the new High King. Blinded by greed, the chief priest readily accepted Ukandu's corrupt offer, and they swiftly struck their secret deal. As part of their sinister plot, the chief priest would create a fake replica of the ancestral staff and arrange mystical charms that would enable only Ukandu to successfully lift it during the test at the Market Day event. However, without the two sneaky people knowing, the main priest's own son accidentally heard all the details of their evil plan while they were discussing how to cheat for their own gain. The young man was shocked to find out that his father, who was supposed to be a religious leader, was willing to break sacred rules for money. Feeling strongly that he had to do something right, the priest's son promised himself he would stop their bad plan. He decided to secretly ruin his father's attempts to cheat in a special ceremony for Ukandu, even if it meant risking himself. While the main priest made the fake staff, his son watched carefully, waiting for the right time to act. And when the priest finished making the fake staff, the young man sneaked in and switched it with the real one when his father wasn't looking. With the fake staff hidden away safely, the main priest had no idea that his own son had tricked him. He kept on preparing magic spells to make sure only Ukandu could lift the fake idol during the upcoming ceremony. In the days before the market day event, Ukandu felt very confident that his bribery had guaranteed his win. He didn't know anything about the secret actions of the High Chief Priest's son. The proud prince didn't realize that the advantage he bought was actually just a trick. Finally, the long-awaited event day finally arrived, and people from all 5 kingdoms gathered in the expansive kingdom square. Kings, nobles, villagers, men from all walks of life congregated to be tested and possibly revealed as the true heir to the throne. Prince Ukandu, aware of his bribery actions, appeared relaxed with a confident smile. He eagerly anticipated having everyone undergo the test, convinced that his deal with the high priest would ensure he lifted the ancestral staff successfully this time. Meanwhile, Chief Uzo and Arinze were present among the crowd, with the wise healer wearing a mysterious, knowing smile on his weathered face. Despite Arinze's doubts about any royal lineage, his father seemed to sense greater forces at play on this fateful day. The atmosphere buzzed with anticipation as the high priest called for silence and began the sacred rituals. One by one, men of all ages stepped forward to try lifting the ancient, ornately carved staff from its resting place. But attempt after attempt ended in failure, as the staff refused to budge for any of the participants. As the day went on, many men tried but none could lift the staff, no matter how strong or important they were. By evening, almost everyone had been tested, except for Arinze and 2 other men. Chief Uzo then told Arinze to step forward. Arinze felt like his father knew something he didn't. "Father, are you keeping something from me?" Arinze asked nervously. But Uzo just said, "Go ahead with the test and don't ask me more questions." Feeling nervous, Arinze followed through and walked into the testing area. The 2 men in front of him tried and couldn't lift the staff. All of a sudden, Arinze was the only one left. The crowd got quiet, and Princess Adan and Prince Ukandu looked worried. Suddenly, Prince Ukandu stood up from where he was seated and began mocking Arinze, fully confident that he had bribed the chief priest and would be the only one capable of lifting the ancestral staff. With an arrogant sneer, he declared that Arinze was a weak man, unfit to lead or even be considered for the throne. "There's no need to test this commoner, an ordinary drummer boy," Ukandu proclaimed loudly. "He should step aside and let me try again. Surely there was some mistake earlier that prevented my success." Agreeing with the prince's demand, the compromised chief priest nodded, stating that Ukandu deserved another opportunity, just in case there had been an error during the previous attempt. Ukandu pushed his way to the front of the line, positioning himself directly in front of Arinze. He believed there was no reason for the humble villager to be tested, as Arinze's life held no remarkable achievements worthy of ruling. With a proud smile, Ukandu walked up to the special platform and tried to lift the old staff, thinking his plan with the bribes would work. He pulled hard, putting all his strength into it, but to his surprise and disappointment, the staff didn't move at all. The crowd watching couldn't believe it either. They expected him to become king easily, but it didn't happen. Thank you for watching. If you want to see how the story ended, write "continue" in the comments so we can finish the last part of this story. Subscribe so you don't miss the end of the story. You will be amazed by how this beautiful story turns out.